2013 we had 591.8 billion naira. Now it's 712 billion naira for the 2014 budget. What's the implication for this?
Well, I think that first of all, let me say that debt management officers said to us that we're within the limits. So and that's a body that is established, to manage, make sure that we are on the right track as far as debt is concerned. And then if you're not factoring debt, that has been put into the deficit. And so we have a deficit as 1.9% of GDP. And the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which we put in place, says we should be not more than 3%. And so we're within there. You see, the thing is that you cannot have one transformation and you want to grow infrastructure, you want to develop the economy, you want to bring back the railways, and you want to construct roads and so on and so forth, without going out there to borrow money. I say to people, it's not every country in the world that wants to borrow money has the capacity to borrow money. Think about that. Okay, so it's a plus. They have the capacity to borrow money. So if we want to borrow and we're able to borrow, the challenge for us is that when we borrow this money, and we should be able to make sure that it's going to be in a way that we spend it, and it's going to leave us worse off at the end of the day. And so if I borrow money and I put it in a place that it's going to fund itself, and it's going to grow the economy, so there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not advocating that we just throw open the gates and then just begin to embrace any. That brings us back to where we were in the past until Okonjo-Iweala came and got us the reprieve of $12 billion. And so, but we want to get back to that. But I'm saying that, look at the debt situation, and we'll make sure that it's properly managed, and we'll make sure that even as we take on this debt, that is put in things that would make this economy more attractive, make it more competitive, and give us more productivity. And as long as we do that, yes, we can take more debt. You cannot grow power. I listened to the president's speech. He did say, for instance, he's going to put 1.5 billion naira to make sure we have transmission. Now, that money, maybe he has to borrow that money to do that. It's promised to us that it's going to give us, assure us, 18 hours uninterrupted supply or power supply. If he's going to do that, and we're in a hurry for him to do that, because then that might, I said to people, if you have a steady power supply in this environment, it's going to do more than what the revolution we have in telecommunication did in this country.
Now, don't forget that also last year, the Minister of Finance, with some senior officials from the Debt Management Office, actually went on a roadshow for $1 billion Euro bond. Now, it was 4 times oversubscribed, mostly by U.S. investors. Most of the proceeds from that bond is supposed to be channeled to the power sector. And now we have a budget deficit, as in we have a debt service of about 1.9% of the budget. What are we expecting the excess monies? Nobody's saying where these excess monies are going to be channeled to. Good enough, you actually mentioned the fact that we had key infrastructure. We have rail, we have the roads, we have the airports, we have all this infrastructure that we need to fix. Even our ferry services. But nobody's talking about channeling money to those rather important sectors that will begin to alleviate the hardship that Nigerians face, especially in terms of transporting the goods and services, the food, and in fact commuting to wherever they're going, either to work or to their houses.
But I think that the thing to say is that if you get this money, they should be well spent. We have lots of challenges in terms of infrastructure deficit. If you take dredging the Niger, for instance, there are lots of things we move by road. Lots of heavy duty things move by road. We shouldn't move by road. Now, one of the things that affects the longevity of our road, so the road is constructed and you find that it does not, the tenure, it doesn't stay there for too long, because we move things that we should ordinarily, you take heavy machinery and so on, you put on the road, it affects the lifespan of the road. And so, and this government, one thing you have to give this government is that in terms of the ideas, we have people who have ideas there in terms of what we need to do. Well, I think that where we come short sometimes is in trying to have these ideas implemented. And I would expect that some of the issues you have there would be, the challenges, those who are trying to administer these things.
Exactly, administration, implementing of these funds when eventually
they come in. People coming in and so on, and then the politics of 2015 and so on, and then, it's disrupting things a lot.
We have 712 billion naira for debt service. Then we have a fiscal deficit of 911.96 billion naira. Is that good enough? Should we be worried about this as well? Well,
like I said, for instance, you have the deficit also. You can't. if you run an economy, it's difficult to run a balanced economy. Ideally, yes, you want to run a balanced economy. I don't know any country of the world that runs a balanced economy. Even the US is the greatest deficit, based economy. So you have to, but the point is, when you have a deficit, you must think through how you're going to fund your deficit, and make sure you fund it in a way that it's not going to undermine productivity in the economy. You're not going to print money, for instance, and pump it. You can print money and pump it there, and then it will undermine the price structure, the price levels in the economy, and the inflationary and so on and so forth. You think through and make sure that when you run the deficit, that this deficit is going to be spent in a way that is thought through and then implemented, and then leakages are minimized. I think leakage is also part of the issue we have.
So in terms of thinking this through, do we go with the kind of policies, programs, or initiatives that we had, or should they be scrapped and new ones reintroduced?
I think that we have the right policies. I mean, I'm not saying that we should be eclectic, we should be open in terms of if we say something that is good somewhere and there's no need. I mean, you can't say what you have as the best, and then you go and see how you can bring it in and adapt here. And some of the ministers we have, they are quite, I think they are quite proactive in terms of trying to look at what goes on elsewhere and then seeing how you can import it to this environment, adapt it, and then see how you can implement it, and so on and so forth. So I think in terms of the policy content, for me, from where I stand, I don't think I will have too many issues. But I think that you have challenges, and it's not easy, to administer an economy as complex and as large as Nigeria, and with all the challenges and the naysayers and the people who think they just sit there and they will do it, and they've seen it all. They put them there and they cannot do it. And so people who are there, they should give them, a breath of fresh air. They should allow to do their best, the best of intentions. And then what we should do, those of us who are outside, is to try as much as possible to be supportive.
Dr. Chizea, also still looking at the revenue projection, for instance, gross federally collectible revenue is 10.88 trillion naira. Gross federally collectible oil and gas revenue is 7.16 trillion naira. How realistic and achievable is this?
Well, see, if you want to talk of revenue, if you take the one that's coming from oil, you go back to basic assumptions. That's all. So, I mean, like with cost oil, I would say, for instance, at that rate, benchmark, some 7.5, and we do agree here that yes, okay, I mean, I would prefer that what the presidency sent in, which was 74, but that they left it at 74. Because as I said before, I said, that it's better for us to have surplus, put it in sovereign wealth fund. So if you look at underlying assumptions, I said these are the assumptions. You take the production of oil, crude per day, 2.3. Last year it was 2.5, about 2.5. And so that's why I said, I think that if you ask me, one of the things you have to score this budget proposal details high on is why that they've tried as much as possible to err on the side of caution. So I think that you see that right through. So if we've done 2.3, now if you can minimize the leakages that's coming from oil thefts and bunkering and so on and so forth. I read in the papers that it's now down from 100,000 barrels a day to 40, which is still high, because if you at an average of $90 per barrel, if you multiply that means in a day you're losing $1.something billion. And so it's massive. But if we begin to do all this, and so if you look at the projected revenue, and you look at it absolutely, you go back to the underlying assumptions and ask yourself, what has it been? And even when you don't have the key details, and you go to yourself and do a trend analysis and say, look, what was it last year? So what was it last year? What did we, how well did we do? And then so now you extrapolate and say, okay, so this year we can say we can do, if we put in some efforts and so on, we can do 5%. And then so it's realistic. So if I'm going to score this budget, I think I have scored it. The issue is not the budget itself, the details in the budget, and the allocations and so on and so forth, there are challenges. The issue is that the budget, how do we get it implemented? I think that's the challenge.
So
I think that
before we even look at that one, I'm really interested in knowing how we were going to score the budget.
Yes.
So how would you score the budget for 2014?
Without in terms of what was put in there.
Yes, what assumptions we're looking at.
I'll score it good. I'll score it good, but I think that, like I said, it's not what is there. It's not those who are putting these things together. They have to express it. Price of my friend Price of Kogu, it's been there for so many years. And the coordinating minister of the economy, Okonjo-Iweala, you can't take anything away from her. This is somebody who has international exposure and everything. So in terms of the budget itself, in terms of the provision of the budget, in terms of